Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town Podcast. I am the Mayor Heath Sharon and the host of this podcast. I am pumped you're here hanging out with me today because I got a great conversation lined up for you. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is sponsored by Smart Choice, the fastest growing agency network, hands down. And you guys love them. I love them. They love the industry. They love you, the independent agent. If you have not heard more about them and you want to, go to smartchoiceagents.com. There's over 10,000 of you guys nationwide that have signed up. There's $11 billion in written premium with Smart Choice. Carriers love them. Agents love them. Vendors love them. They're just a great company to work with. Go to smartchoiceagents.com. It looks like Canopy Connect. Canopy Connect is your one-click solution to getting deck pages that you need, getting driver's lists that you needed, getting loss runs that you needed, anything that you need on the intake process. They want to be a part of that, and they want to help you and streamline that and make that a wonderful process and a wonderful workflow for your clients, for your agency, saving you time, which makes you more money. Go to usecanopy.com/Heath so you can get a demo. You could definitely get a discount. And you can just let them know how much you love it. I promise you, you're going to. Lastly, my friends over at Old School Marketing, taking a new school approach to an old school way of marketing with direct mail pieces, handwritten direct mail pieces that come out in a different, unique style that not done by anybody else in our space. They keep your phone ringing all month long and not just one day or 1 week at a time. Rusty and his team do a great job. Go to oldeschoolmarketing.com. Now, guys, I've got to hurry up and get out of the way because this conversation is a blast, and you're going to love it. Bobby Turan, what's up, brother?
How are you, Heath?
I'm good, man. Did I get that right? Turan?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Well, I got a little thrown off a little bit because the name on your Zoom says something different. So is that Baabak?
Yeah, Baabak. That nice
Baabak.
pronunciation on that too. That's my official name. And I don't know how that got into my Zoom account. It's funny. I'll be on calls where me and the other person will join, and then they won't say anything for like 30 minutes. So it'll just be like, oh, hi. And then sort of at the very last minute, they'll be like, so Baabak, did I say that correctly? I was like, yeah, you could have just mentioned something at the beginning. I would have told you that you could
Right. So is that a family name, or are you from, some other nationality or country?
My parents are from Iran. Yeah.
Okay.
But I was
Okay.
born here in the US and born and raised here. And so, yeah, I've always just gone by Bobby.
There you go. Well, that's all I've ever known you as is Bobby. So when I saw that pop up, I was kind of like, huh, that's interesting. All right, cool. So, have you ever been to Iran or like
I
spent some
have been
time
there.
there and
Yeah,
met
I've been
family
there,
there?
but
And
not for like more than 25 years at this point. I went
oh,
once
wow.
just as a younger kid, but it's been a minute.
I gotcha. Okay. So, um, before we get too deep into any more awkward conversations about Iran or your name, whatever, why don't we take a little walk down memory lane and we'll talk, a little bit, let the audience know who you are, what led you up to where you are today, all that kind of good stuff. And then we'll dive into some of the other stuff and the things we've talked about in the past at PIAs and whatnot. So, floor's yours. Let's hear a little bit about you for a few minutes.
Yeah. So again, really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I grew up outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Um, Spent my childhood and formative years there. I actually left the Boston area where there's lots of good schools to go to school up in Canada. And that's going to factor into sort of the story for starting Rainbow later. And loved it. And still have many close friends from college who live back up in Canada. And then moved back to the US in 2008 and was originally planning to work in finance, but obviously we had the financial crisis going on. And so more as a way to kind of keep myself busy, me and a couple of friends from school started a business, and it just ended up becoming this very consuming hobby. And it also, it's funny, you're talking about like name and things like that, like it started to feel like it became part of my identity. And it's sort of like, because you're a business owner and anyone who listens knows, this is like there's no off switch. This is like what you do all the time. And so then it starts to become hard to imagine yourself not kind of being an operator. Um, and so yeah, so got the bug for being an entrepreneur. Worked briefly at a venture capital firm, like helping them incubate companies. This was way before more companies were doing incubation. And so again, got to sort of see firsthand like how investors think about companies they want to invest in. So it was a great experience. And then was the founder of a few different businesses. And then in 2017, fast forwarding a little bit, I sort of fell into the insurance industry. Absolutely loved it. And I've never looked back. And honestly, I can't really imagine working on anything else now.
Okay. Okay. So you fell into insurance. You can't just leave us there. Okay. So how did you get from there? Like what led you to, I'm guessing your first dip into that was PathPoint. So,
Yep.
and you started PathPoint, created PathPoint. What kind of brought you into that place? Like, how did you decide insurance?
Well, so the one thing that was really consistent about the industries that I had been an operator or founder in was that none of them were the same. And in fact, they weren't even like really similar. And I'm a pretty curious person, and I love sort of falling in love with new industries and figuring out like all the names, all the companies, like the why. I really enjoy that. It's very motivating for me, exciting for me. In 2012, 13, I'd moved to New York City. And while there, I was working at a company and met someone who moved to San Francisco a little bit before me in 2016, I want to say, to work at a startup incubator. And the incubator was focused on starting companies that were trying to innovate financial services. Um, and the model was that they would bring in an experienced entrepreneur who had been a founder in the past, who wanted to do something in finance. And I'd studied econ and finance in college, had always been interested in financial services, but actually had never really started anything in financial services. But the person who I knew sort of told me to consider participating in the incubator. It required me to move to San Francisco, which I did. And in 2007, in the middle of 2017, and he and myself and one other person started basically riffing on ideas in financial services. We looked at a bunch of different things. Insurance, admittedly, was not really one of them. And then we were having a conversation with the person who ran, or who I guess was like ultimately responsible for the incubator. And they were like, hey, we have been hearing that there's like tons of opportunity for software to make things more efficient, faster, better in commercial insurance. And would you guys be interested in having a conversation? And we said yes, but it's because we didn't really have a better idea to work on at all. And we did some calls, and we spoke to agents, we spoke to underwriters. Every one of those calls was a huge learning experience. People were using all this terminology I'd absolutely never heard before in my life. And like I said, though, that was actually very motivating to me, very exciting, very engaging for me and for the two people I started the company with. Um, and yeah, it's basically just didn't look back, just kept kind of doing more calls, kept getting a little bit smarter and smarter about kind of what we wanted to focus on. And then ultimately, we decided to focus on the surplus lines industry. Um, and this is in 2017 when basically nobody was really as focused on innovating in that part of the market, and had tons of incredible experiences. Got to travel to London and sort of go into the Lloyd's of London building and sort of see that whole ecosystem. Traveled to Atlanta and sort of met like a lot of those companies. Anyway, it just sort of became this obsession of mine to learn about the insurance industry and understand uh, how software could kind of play a role. And it all kind of started in the E&S industry, which right now is experiencing this huge boom.
Oh
But
yeah.
but back then, basically nobody wanted to talk to us at all about
You're 100%
innovating.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've had that conversation with several because, I spent a very short stint of my life in the MGA space as a marketing rep, and I was the least favorite person walking in the door when they back in those days. They were all back when I was doing. I think it was back in the mid 2000s. People were wanting to more write their business with their direct carriers, with their national players, Travelers, Hartford, or Liberty Mutual, whoever it might be. They didn't want to see an E&S guy because to me, or for them, I was just a guy to write their trash or to take the business that their standard markets didn't want. And
Right.
so that I can understand that completely. And so from that standpoint, and then all the questions you were asking, the things that you learned, what was the thing that landed on you still coming to that MGA space when you knew it wasn't maybe the most popular space to be in?
We became a licensed surplus lines agent, and we started to narrow our focus more on kind of the more transactional end of the business spectrum. So think like binding authority, delegated authority, contract binding, basically small commercial E&S. And we started focusing on those carriers or those markets that had these products available via API. And we basically wanted to build a digital platform, and we would go out and get retail agents. So instead of them emailing something over to a broker and they're having to be a bunch of back and forth with the broker saying, hey, I don't understand. Can you clarify this? We just tried to make that all through a single portal where the agent could then submit their business off to many different E&S carriers instantly via API and get bindable quotes back. And then we would act as the surplus lines agent. Now, everything I'm describing to you and sort of having it all fit together the way I described, it took a while to sort of figure
Oh
out
yeah, I can only imagine.
what to do. But yeah, so that's kind of how it really was like just one foot in front of the other every day, staying committed to this market when a lot of people were like, a lot of people have tried to digitize this. It's really not worked. I don't know why you think it's going to be different. And again, I think for some people, I guess ourselves included, that's the type of setting that's actually very motivating and exciting.
Yeah. So do you think of yourself and your co-founders, I guess, now as still a tech person? Are you now realizing I'm an insurance guy now, or where are you somewhere in the middle there? Like what, like when you talk to people, do you say, hey, I'm in the insurance business, or are you still a tech guy that just happens to be in the insurance business?
I would almost ask you. I mean, like you tell me what you think. I'll give you some data points on me. And so
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example, me and my co-founders all went out and we got licensed as insurance agents because we were
Okay.
like, okay, if we're going to be an agent, like we owe it to the industry to at least like study this stuff. So we
Yeah, I
did.
love that. Yeah.
We every single day when I wake up, I get probably a dozen different industry trade journals into my inbox, all the ones that you subscribe to as well. I read every single one of them. I don't get any tech journals delivered to my inbox. Okay. I stay up to date on what's happening in technology, but I don't go to any tech conferences with the exception of InsurTech Connect, I guess, depending
Of
on how you want
course.
to categorize that. But you and I met, like less than 2 months ago at the PIA conference. I wouldn't exactly describe that as a technology conference. I
Nope.
just came from Target Markets in Phoenix. Again, wouldn't describe that as a. Now, of course, all these industries, they talk about technology
Well, sure. I
because of course they do. But I really spend pretty much every waking hour where I'm not with my family, uh, thinking about what's happening with the insurance industry, where is it heading next, and how do I position our company uh, to kind of benefit from the direction that things are moving. And I'm not actually I'm not trained as an engineer. I can't write code. As someone I know, though, who runs a very large clothing company once told me, I don't know how to sew, but I know how to run a clothing company,
There you go.
And so I absolutely think of myself as an insurance person.
Yeah,
And
and I would agree with
oh,
you. And
oh,
so that shift for you and mindset of starting off when you were telling me your story, you were tech people, now you're in insurance. Is that, did you ever think you'd be at that place?
definitely not.
I don't think a lot of us.
Absolutely not. And even after we got started, I was still trying to like figure out if that's what I was. I was like, what how would people define me now? But it's just something that I've like I said, I've just really fallen in love with. I never could have imagined the scope and scale of insurance. I always thought it was very, compartmentalized, sort
Yeah.
of black and white in a little box. But in fact, what I've come to realize is that it's incredibly dynamic. It's changing all the time. And the thing that's incredible about insurance in the United States, in particular, is that it underpins every aspect of the world around us.
Oh
Nothing
my gosh,
would be
yes.
possible. Nothing would be possible, right?
Nothing.
Um,
Yeah.
and
And
uh, and so that's really motivating to me, and it's just sort of like a never-ending puzzle that you have to sort of try to solve. And I don't think I'd be able to keep trying to solve that puzzle if I was only a tech person.
yeah, no, I agree. And that's one of the things that, I've noticed as I've been to ITC a couple of times and I recorded some podcasts there. And a lot of people I talked to there were, and it's changed and shifted a little bit over the years, which I want to get into that with you in a minute. But, I noticed early on, and even now to this day, there's a lot of tech people that want to dip their toe in insurance because they see white space. I don't care what you call it, but they see some opportunity. So they jump in there, but they don't quite have the passion and the respect for the industry that sounds like you have, that obviously I have coming in it from second generation. And so, I see a mistake there. I see a lot of those that, I look back at some of the people that I interviewed and talked to in 2021, even that aren't even in the space anymore, that, have come and gone, or they didn't quite make it, or whatever it might be. And some of the people that I've talked to through the years, and I think it is because they don't want to wrap their arms around insurance. They just want to have a money grab. And so I'd love to hear, from you as you came into it, just before pandemic in 16, 17, whatever it might have been. And then, through the last 8, 9 years, what kind of shift have you seen, and what are you thinking, leading forward and moving forward in this industry with more and more technology?
Well, so I would just say react to one thing that you said, which I think is absolutely right. And it's something that I've had to sort of like revisit myself several times as I've been on this journey now starting a second company, which is that there is a mentality. And I'm calling you today from the Bay Area, where our company is headquartered in San Francisco. And this is, as I think a lot of people know, a place where companies are built, industries are
Yeah.
sort of turned on their heads. And there's a lot of things that are always said in the narrative, like, oh, insurance is 20 years behind every other segment of financial services. And look at what happened to banking. Look at what happened to credit. Look at what happened to
Right.
mortgages. And the
Yep.
thing that, I mean, like I have obviously no experience in any of those things, but certainly much less than I have in insurance, is I really hope that as people listen to this, more people are motivated to get into try to innovate insurance, because I
Uh-huh.
think there's lots of room for innovation. And I think it's truly, of all the financial services out there, it's one of the only ones that I know of that is actually really like providing a good to the society, right? Like it protects you when bad things happen. It doesn't get rich if you forget to like make payments on something that you bought once. That's not really why it's set up that way. But the thing that you have to keep revisiting is that I don't care how smart you think you are technically or how good you think your software is, there is like a cadence to this industry that you will not be able to overturn. People are not gonna, you're not gonna one day come up with something. And one of the things I love is observing now how the insurance industry is looking at AI. And I think that there is this, maybe more so than other tech phenomena, but like there may be this perception that, man, overnight, insurance is going to change because of AI. And I just really don't think that that's true at all. And I think that if you want to innovate in this industry and you want to be a founder, please come do that, because I think the industry and therefore like the US economy will benefit. But you just have to take like an 8 to 10 to 15 year horizon in terms of like what the impact of what you're going to do is really going to require from a timing. You got to remember that the core pieces of insurance have not changed in hundreds of years.
Right. Right.
For
Right.
you
Right.
to
Right.
say, for you to say, oh, you as an outsider say, oh, I'm gonna come in and, this is so silly. Watch what I can do here with 2 moves of my keyboard. I mean, it's just not gonna happen. And then if you fast forward really just 12, 24 months, the whole scenario really flipped on its head. I think that there were like a handful of things that people believed to be true for those who wanted to disrupt things that I think have proven to be absolutely not true. And there's plenty of examples, but a couple that I would give you is number one, agents don't matter. There was this huge mentality, right? Like you think about what is
Well, yeah,
software
a lot of people back then were trying to go straight to consumer, and they had a lot of
right to consumer, right?
DTC. And I think really quickly people realized, nope, we have to have the independent agent
And why did they do that, right? Like ultimately,
because
these
this is still a relationship game.
well, 100%, right? And that's what they didn't appreciate. And I think the what startups try to do is make things work faster or cheaper generally. That's like, at least at its core, what are some of the common or more accurately or more precisely. And I think people looked at the expenses of a carrier and said, hey, why would you pay an agent 10, 12, 15, in the case of ENS, 25, 35 points of commission every year for something that they sold you years ago? That's so silly. Like, let's just cut that out. And what they came to realize was that distribution and P&C insurance is really difficult. And it's because of exactly what you said. Relationships are critical and relationships aren't going anywhere. And now, if you look in the United States, the percentage of small commercial P&C premiums trading through agents is actually increasing.
Yep.
It's one of the few developed economies where that is true. Whereas you have lots of other countries where, it's not dramatically decreasing, but more and more people are just comfortable buying insurance online. So
Well,
agents,
and
that was a big myth.
yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I was just going to say to your point, I remember even back in the days before the pandemic when I owned an agency, and when I was working in agency, even going back further than that as a producer and whatnot, I would find often we would get calls from people that would say they had Progressive or they had whatever it might have been they bought online, Geico, whatever it might have been, and they wanted if I could help them file a claim or I could help them with this or that. We'd be like, well, you know, uh, we're not your agency on this. We'd gladly help you. Here's the 800 number, whatever it might be. We'd love to quote your insurance later on the road, whatever. But they would still call me or our agency, even though they bought them. And so even before all of this, like you said, this shift of agents do matter, there would be people that would buy online and they would come to me and say, hey, could you help fix this? Or this was written wrong, or I had an accident and this, they said it wasn't covered. And I was like, well, because you bought the cheapest that was minimum limits, and no, it's not going to cover this, or not enough for this, or I can remember a lot of examples of that. So again, I've always in the 22 years of my career been a relationship first guy, but
Yep.
even more nowadays with technology. I tell people my my soapbox on that is, it always will be, it's a fact that technology is here to enhance, not to replace. And people
But
think, oh, it's going to replace my people, it's going to replace my technology, it's going to replace my why or my what I'm doing, or it's going to blah 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 blah, and it's not. It's going to enhance your processes, it's going to enhance your procedures, it's going to enhance your people, it's going to make everything better. And that way you can focus on the relationships with your carriers or with your people or with your staff or with your clients, whatever it might be.
yeah,
And so to your point, I completely agree with you 100%. And so as you've, transitioned, and started Rainbow, I would love to know what that's been for you since 2022, and what you guys are doing at Rainbow, and how that's different from where you started with Pathpoint, if you could talk to that a little bit.
yeah. So Pathpoint continues to grow and do really well, and it has fantastic leadership and growing the number of agents, growing the number of markets, really
Yeah.
proving out that thesis, and that's great. Um, I started Rainbow in 2022 because I still believed there was an opportunity in another area that there was just like a general misconception around, which was more digitally enabled underwriting. And I think
Okay.
part of what I believed was a couple things, but number one, digitally enabled doesn't mean that human underwriters have no role in the equation. That's sort of another myth that a lot of entrepreneurs had. Agents don't matter, underwriters don't matter. Why would I send a risk to an underwriter when I can send it into a formula that will never be incorrect, that will never have had a bad day that morning, and maybe look at something through a different lens?
Right. Right.
And forget about the expense and so on and so on. And I really believe that there was still tons of opportunity in small commercial insurance from an underwriting perspective. You look at small commercial, almost $200 billion a year of premium, and still the dominant players are the names that have been there for over 100 years. Very fragmented market too. The largest carrier has 8% market share in small commercial in the United States. And so there's this very long tail of different carriers or programs or MGAs that are focusing on different things. So we wanted to sort of focus on small commercial and middle market insurance. And the way that we wanted to do it was to have human underwriters on our team that are assisted by software that can help enhance their decision making, that can remove opening 100 emails that you get on the day of a renewal because a broker has BCC'd you in every other market they quote with, and you have to sit there and read through every single email for submissions that you'd never ever want to quote. We can make underwriters way more productive on the risks that they would actually want to underwrite, right? And that's something that we believe is really powerful. And the way that we wanted to ultimately be better at underwriting, meaning produce better loss ratios over time, was that we wanted to be specialized. This is something that I'd learned from the E&S experience that was always really fascinating to me. When I was learning about E&S and the markets that we could have on our platform at PathPoint, I would travel around and I would meet these entrepreneurs who were very much entrepreneurs, and I had sort of my view of what entrepreneurship was, and I'd meet these individuals who might be in like Scottsdale or Arizona. There's definitely concentrations of them, and they would be really, really, really good. And this is just something random I'm seeing in front of me at underwriting plastic beverage containers. And they would have a program, or they'd be really good at underwriting pens or laptops. And they had just developed this expertise, and they had this insurance product. And a lot of times they would get to travel to London at least once or twice a year and take their significant other, and everyone loved it. And, and I was like, that's a great life. Like, that's a good business. You're filling a need in the marketplace. You can control your own destiny. The businesses were all very profitable. It would be frustrating to me that none of them wanted to use any software, but whatever, to each their own. They didn't need to. They had a great business. And so what was surprising to me was, why aren't more people thinking about small commercial in a more specialized way? So what I set out to do was I built an online platform for quote bind issue. We built a number of underwriting tools. We hired a team, and we started to think about small commercial, not in terms of hundreds of addressable class codes, but in terms of 5 to 10 addressable class codes at a time. And so the very first segment that we launched a program in was for restaurants. So we insure restaurants today on a BOP. In fact, the program is admitted because we really felt like that's what we would need to have to be competitive versus a non-admitted product. We distribute it through our platform directly to agents. We don't do any distribution directly to restaurant owners. And we wrote our first policy effective August 1st of last year, and fast forward 15 or so months, we're writing in 24 states, and very actively growing the business, and now sort of starting to get ready to launch those next verticals of the business. And so, like us doing what we've been thinking about.
Yeah. So you're talking about restaurants. Are you talking, and you said 5 or 6, 10, whatever class codes. You're not just talking traditional, just, 8 to 5, whatever it might be, 8 to 8 restaurants or whatever. You're talking, you could do after hours or clubs, maybe, or bars or alcohol. You could do, different types of restaurants. Or are you talking just your traditional, close a decent hour, no liquor involved, maybe it's a sandwich shop or something basic?
So that's a great question. Because we have been so specialized, and because that specialization comes forward in sort of like the underwriting talent we have on our team, but then also the tools and technology we've built to evaluate the risks, we actually have very broad appetite for how you define the word restaurant. So we can write restaurants that do basically, so you were giving the example of like, nightlife or like entertainment, or like, those are the only types of businesses that we do not write. We are not a market for bars and taverns.
Okay.
That being said, we write wine bars, we write breweries and brew pubs, though some of those could be close to 100% alcohol.
Sure.
But any business that serves food is attractive for us. And that can be casual dining, that can be fine dining, that can be quick service, that could be, like you said, sandwich, deli, coffee shop. It can be a ghost kitchen. It can be a new venture.
Could
We
it be
can
a
write
food truck?
very high alcohol sales, up to 65% alcohol. You're not going to get that type of alcohol limitation from basically any other market, admitted or non-admitted. Um, we are able to write multi-location type submissions, so we've written schedules of businesses. The other thing that I really like about restaurants, which is a big part of why we chose it as our first category, is because whether or not you realize it, you know what a good restaurant looks like, and you know what a bad restaurant looks like,
Yep.
right? Eating your whole life, you've probably eaten out a bunch at all different types of restaurants. And that's the other thing too, is that you've probably eaten at a takeaway window of a burger place. You've been to sushi, you've had pasta, you've done all these different things. You've been to bars, and you know what a good place looks like and a bad place looks like. So if you said, hey, stop for a second and imagine a restaurant that you wish you were the insurance on, or you're the broker on, because they're going to be good operators and they're going to bring healthy premium to the table. You could probably get pretty close to naming one or two, even
Yeah.
just hometown. And similarly, you could probably say, hey, what are the two restaurants or bars that you'd never want to insure? You know, that might even be easier to determine. And that's really interesting. And if you think about that compared to like contractors, like you said, or
Yeah.
uh, other specific industry niches, I think it's harder, right? Like you could say, oh, if it's a roofer, I don't want someone who's maybe fallen off the roof before. It's like, okay, fair. But I bet you the person who fell off the roof didn't fall off the roof because they wanted to, right? Like people have like a good understanding, at least initially, on like what makes a good restaurant. And then with that context, I think you can educate yourself. And we have tons of resources that are available for folks just on our website that talk you through how to think about what types of coverage are most beneficial to what types of restaurateur. Um, and then, just like anything else, you sort of chip away at it and you can get going with that business.
Yeah. The other thing that I think about, and what kind of got me into it, obviously, you mentioned a lot of the things as far as restaurants are everywhere. I love to eat. Most people have eaten everywhere, whatever it might be. But the other thing I loved about restaurants, and this is going to lead me into Rainbow again, but one of the things I found separated me from other competition within that space was going in and being able to offer certain safety trainings, or talk to them about hood vents, or be able to talk to them about sprinkler system, or talk to them about slip resistant floor mats, or talk to them about temperature lockers, talk to them about waiter training on how to even carry the trays, or food delivery, all of those kind of things. And some of that stuff was common sense because I'd watched restaurants, good ones, and some of them was things I learned. But when I could go in and start talking about their language and those kind of things, it for me set me apart. And I'm talking to the agent listening right now. Those are things you can go in, and little things like that could go a long, long way when you start talking about all those things I just brought up. And so that being said, one of the things I loved as I was going through your website was you guys, obviously you hate claims. Most people do, but you even say that flat out on your website. We hate claims and we want to help you with that. And we want to give discounts for this. And we want to help you find those things and find trainings and whatnot. Could you tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing that aspect to help agents to be more fluent, so to speak, in restaurant lingo?
Yeah. So we do two things that I think differentiates us. And these two things are things that we are constantly trying to improve. So the first is a belief that if two businesses, the way insurance is underwritten, say two burger shops that have the exact same sales. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, they're in the exact same address, same crime score, same building age, same all those things. At the end of the day, there are going to be things that the staff and the management of that restaurant do which make that business safer. So if it's somewhere where they experience winters, The good staff is going to constantly be mopping the floor so people's wet boots aren't creating a slippery environment. They're going to put down mats, like you said, by the door. They're going to clean their bathroom more frequently. If they serve high-end fish or something that can lead to foodborne illness, they're going to be very, very specific about how they do all those things. A lot of those answers to those questions do not come forward in a traditional insurance application, even if the business seems to be identical from the outside, sort of looking in. And we just fundamentally believe that if you are less risky, and this isn't like a big idea in terms of how I'm saying it, but what's sort of remarkable is that we just believe most insurance companies just don't really do this. If you're less risky, you should pay less in premium. That's it. And so what we ask our insureds to do is give us additional information that we can use to evaluate your business. Send us pictures of your grease traps. Send us pictures of the tiling on your floor. Send us proof of certification of your management going through some training. For every one of those things you send us, we will give you pricing credits, basically. The second thing that we do that we also felt like was different from how traditional companies have thought about small commercial is we do something called continuous underwriting. And what this is we acknowledged that when most people buy a commercial insurance policy, really any insurance policy, but a commercial insurance policy in particular, the insurance company is really only looking at that risk one time when they buy it, right? To your point, maybe when there's a claim, and then possibly at renewal, although not necessarily, because some carriers just don't audit their policyholders. And what we thought to ourselves was, because we were in the reinsurance market and we were hearing from reinsurers, Bobby, we would love to write more restaurants. Genuinely, like they'd say this with a straight face. The problem is we're very self-conscious of what we're actually on risk for. And I would ask them, how frequently do you look at the risks? And they were sort of like confused by this question. They were like, well, of course we only look at it once. And I was like, well, isn't there some room for improvement there? Like, isn't it possible as a small business owner that 6 months into something, you realize, hey, I have to make a change in my menu. I have to stay open later. I have to do drink specials. I have to have an open mic night. At the end of the day, these business owners are not trying to be more risky. They're trying to not go out of business because their livelihood depends on this. Every policy that's on our books, every data source that we use at the time of initially underwriting a risk, we continue to crawl those data sets every 24 hours. And we have filters that basically flag key terms, late nights, food poisoning, rude staff, things like that. And this is not so that we can surprise business owners or agents with like oh, hang on, this is going on. In fact, it's the very opposite of that. It's going to inform us. And since we never interact directly with the insureds, everything goes through the agents. When we start to see a pattern of things that are troubling, staying open late, lots of foodborne illness, live entertainment is now advertised. It was originally an open mic with an acoustic guitar on Friday nights that ended at 9 p.m. Now it's 5 nights a week. Those are things that we can tell our agents so that they can have an informed convo with their insured to help prevent a claim from even happening, to help prevent severe claims from happening, and most importantly, to help prevent, in a situation where there is a claim, the insured and the agent not suddenly being surprised when the insurance company says, well, hang on, this risk is really different than what we underwrote. Like we're not gonna pay this claim, or we're not gonna pay the full amount because this is a material change or misrepresentation.
Well, that
again,
also,
I don't think people do this to be nefarious. Like, I don't think
no.
They're just doing their thing.
I just think it's also a good opportunity for agents as they get that information to be able to educate their clients on, hey, by the way, you probably didn't think about this, but by you advertising on Facebook that you're open till 2 a.m. now, that's a complete, change. And the insurance company is going to see that as, a red flag, or they're not going to like that, or whatever it might be. And you can explain to them what happened. There's, the reason why, there might be fights late night. There might be, over serving, or there might be this, and there might be that, or you never know, it was a a single guy strumming a guitar on the side until 9 o'clock. Now it's every night, and you got this. You're attracting a different crowd now. You got this going on. It's different liabilities. It's giving you opportunity to educate. So I think that's really cool. And there's so many other things. I just brought up a couple of examples that you had brought up. I think that's really cool that you're doing that. When I saw that on your website, that was really neat. The other thing, kind of going alongside with that, another issue that I ran into a lot in writing commercial insurance was large audits a lot of times, whether it's a work comp audit or a general liability audit. And you guys have a unique way of you guys handling that. And we're coming up on end of time, which I hate, but if you could just quickly tell me kind of how you guys have handled that with the general liability and with their sales, because a lot of times, like you said, businesses change. At the beginning they might have thought, oh, we predict $1 million in sales, but then halfway through, like, man, we've had a killer year. We're going to be at 2, or vice versa. It could be it's been a tough year. We've only hit 300,000 our first half a year. Can we adjust that? Talk to me a little bit about that for a second.
We have this other component to the way that we allow for payment of our policies, which is, again, pretty unique to us, which is called pay as you go. And so this is a concept which, originally we were sort of inspired by what work comp does. You buy a work comp policy, you give the carrier access to your payroll data. Ideally, you don't get audited. I will tell you that we have a pay as you go work comp policy, and we got audited last year. So even pay as you goers, are sometimes subject to this. We went through a lot of back and forth, ultimately for really not much money at all. And so I was sort of left trying to understand why that was the case. But anyway, we developed the first pay-as-you-go business owner policy in the market. And basically what that is it's still an annual term policy. You have insurance all the time. You have an annual policy. You make a deposit. And then what we do is, if you send us your POS sales data as an ongoing export, or if you send us your QuickBooks or bookkeeping exports, we can process that information and adjust the premium that you pay, the general liability component of the BOP pricing, up or down month over month as your sales fluctuate. And it's really powerful because not only are the insureds only paying for exactly the insurance they need, and also there will be very, very little chance that they will have to be audited. It's also just better hygiene for us. It's yet another sort of continuous lens into how these businesses are operating.
The other thing, you talk about on your website, getting a quote within 5 minutes, or you can submission and get a bind in under 5 minutes. Talk to me a little bit about that for a second. And then, as we wrap up, if you wanted to share anything else that we've missed as far as Rainbow goes. And then if we wanted to move it, I got another question or two about, the future of Rainbow. But if you just want to talk to me a little bit about, that restaurant 5-minute quote.
Yeah. So we've built another one of the things that we are really big believers in, and then maybe this goes back to being a tech person. We just really believe in building our own software. And so I think a number of other MGAs, MGUs, they'll cobble together a bunch of third-party systems. We have built our entire quote bind issue experience ourselves, our team, our onshore team has built that. And what that's allowed us to do is to be incredibly flexible. When we go live in a new state because our filing is approved, agents can be binding business in that state in the same day. Barring something unforeseen, you will have feedback from our underwriting team always within 24 hours and generally within an hour or two of business hours. We're just big believers in the fast no is better than the slow maybe or the slow yes or whatever they say. So we know that agents are busy and time is money. So we take delays on customer service really, really seriously. And in fact, one of the things that we hear that people love about our business, the work of our incredible team, is they love that people often say, agents often say, we're the only insurtech they've worked with that marries a good digital experience with a human touch. And so that's something that we're going to try to keep maintaining as we go through as we sort of grow the business.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, but especially in ENS, like you said, when you first started this, it would take people a long time to get a quote from ENS. Sometimes it would take a lot of process of filling out supplementals and getting this, and then they'd have to go and submit it to whoever they have, and all this process took a while. But so be able to get that bindable quote.
So
So
it's all admitted. By the way, I just want
all
to
admitted. Okay, so it's all.
Rainbow's BOP is entirely admitted. Pathpoint focuses exclusively, or for the most part, on non-admitted business, but
But you
our
were
Rainbow's business,
okay.
the current program is 100% admitted.
Okay, so yeah, admitted quote within 5 minutes is pretty solid. So tell me if if you don't mind, talk to me a little bit about as we wrap up the rainbow, like what you guys are doing differently that sets you or things I've missed maybe. Is there anything you could talk to us about at all that's not giving too much away?
Right. Yeah. So, I don't love the analogy that I've sometimes heard before about our company but I do think it's relevant in certain ways. I think we think about restaurants as kind of the way that Amazon thought about books, right? So it was, let's digitize books through a digital platform with a team. Let's build a track record, and then let's start moving into other categories of stuff that we want to sell. So we absolutely believe that our approach is not specific to restaurants really at all. Basically, everything that I described to you that underpins what makes us different and what gives us more confidence with underwriting, we think applies to many other categories, industry verticals within small commercial. We're actually just getting ready to launch our next vertical. It's not totally final yet, so I'm going to hold on telling you, but if you would have me back as a guest 6 months from
Yeah.
now or something, I'd be happy to tell you guys all about it. It's another sort of like Main Street class of business. And that's really exciting. Going into 2025, we plan to launch two more industry verticals.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
and so this ability to keep servicing more and more of the business of our agent partners is a big part of our value proposition, but it's also the way that we sort of, yeah, make it easier for agents to do business. And we see that as like a major benefit to our company. Um,
How would they be able to get in touch with you?
They can email me directly. I talk to our
Okay.
agents myself all the time. You can just email me at Bobby, Bobby, at userainbow.com. And we are accepting applications for new appointments. We have a whole team that is truly incredible at managing that process and making it easy and painless for the agent. And you can be appointed within, call it 24 hours, and you can start writing business with us. And yeah, I said again, we try to really keep our website very up to date. If you look on our website, you can see our appetite guide, you can see our availability, our footprint. New York and New Jersey are sort of the next two big states that we're hoping will go live sooner rather than later. But we already write a lot of business in California and Texas, throughout the Midwest, in the Southwest, in the Southeast. We're starting to be all
I
over. Yeah.
I do love that on your website, and I'm looking at it right now, where you have a section for recent wins, and you're not shy about saying that you wrote, 13 Dairy Queens, that you've written,
Yeah.
a sports club, that you've got a beer garden with mini golf, so people can have an idea of, oh, this is what these people are writing, and you've got, the not I don't know if it's premiums or what they do in sales, whatever it might be, but it's really cool to see. I don't see that very often, to see, a California breakfast and lunch cafe with, with claims history, to be able to have those to be like, oh, this is a good idea.
We just try to help contextualize it for the agents.
Yeah, that's
Just sort of the
brilliant.
sell sheet, which I think sell sheets typically you read one thing, you get everything ready, you do the work, you submit it, and you get a quick decline. That's not a fun feeling. So we just try to give them some more context.
Yeah, I think that's cool. The other thing that I've seen, on your website a couple of times is, I don't know how often you do this, but you have webinars that you guys host for agents.
We host a
Is that
weekly
just
webinar.
okay?
Any agent is welcome to join that.
And those are
Uh,
on Thursdays.
Those are on Thursdays. Yep. And again, if you want to participate in the webinar and you have trouble tracking down the link, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, bobby@userainbow.com. We can connect you up with the right folks. But yeah, those webinars are great. They get to meet members of our team who would be handling their business with them. They answer questions about appetite, about how to use the platform, about all that stuff. And it turns out to be really fun and an engaging way to learn more about not just Rainbow, but the people who make Rainbow possible.
Oh, I love that. Man, I really appreciate you. I can't believe that was like a quick hour. So,
I really appreciate you having
man,
me. I would tell listeners that I think the future for insurance and technology are both really bright, and we'd love to show you, if you're an agent listening, we'd love to show you what we can do with your restaurant business. Again, just email me, bobby@userainbow.com, and I'll personally make sure that you get connected to the right folks.
perfect. Man, thank you again so much for coming, and and I look forward to seeing you at the next PA event, and I look forward to seeing you around. And we'll definitely connect again in 6 months or so, and let me know what the next one is.
Sounds great. I really appreciate it, Heath.
All right, brother. Thank you.